Coming up on this episode.
So I got my, accidental shutter. I got my Leica M10 here. We probably even have to go a little bit back and talk about what reality even is. Photography, in my opinion, is like a language. Do you know how to operate a camera at least?
I know how to turn it on.
Every photo we take is a self-portrait. And we'll see the world in color again. We're back. Crazy. Photography is a time and space paradox. Habe ich bisher Quatsch gelabert oder macht das Sinn? Well, the weather is not in our favor today, but we're gonna try to do it anyway. Welcome to Germany, by the way. But this video will be a bit different than the other videos because I'll, bring you along this kind of journey in my mind, because today I would like to talk to you about philosophy. And one might ask, what does photography have to do with philosophy? And I tell you, quite a lot actually. Well, in this video I would like to just name a couple of phrases, a couple of thoughts that I had about photography, how I see photography, what kind of ideas and ideations I have in my mind when taking photos. And you can see if any of these thoughts sound familiar, if you think the same or if you disagree, and we'll see what comes out of it. Oh, do you see the stone with the teeth and the ear and the eyes? That's pretty cool. So of course I couldn't just do it sitting on my desk, but of course I wanted to do some photography myself too. So we are here in this industrial part of my city and see if we can find any good frames while philosophizing about photography. This is a good one actually here. Okay, but basically the first thing I would like to talk about is that, in my opinion, photography doesn't capture reality. When we talk about art and forms of art, I feel like a lot of people think that photography is kind of the easy thing because you just take a photo and it kind of shows what you see in front of you. And I think what people don't really understand is that photography is not really kind of capturing reality, because it's distorting reality through the device that we're using, and that reality is kind of subjective anyway. So if we talk about how photography portrays reality, we probably even have to go a little bit back and talk about what reality even is. And I feel like we don't really know what reality is, because I could tell you that there's this white chair and you see the white chair as well, and we communicate about the same thing, and in my head I see the color white, but do I know if you see the color white in the same way? Maybe you have a purple chair, but because we agreed that what we see is white, everybody's kind of perceiving reality differently, so we don't really know. And so what we see in photography is also kind of distorted by this abstract understanding of what reality actually is. And I have to take a shot real quick. It's actually quite nice here. Let me see. And so we always say that, a kind of something 40-ish millimeter lens to 50-ish millimeter lens is kind of the perspective we see with our eyes. And that means that this is kind of the reality that we kind of interpret from what humans have in their field of vision. But once you use a different lens than that, once you use a wide-angle lens, once you use a telephoto lens, reality changes. So just by using the focal length of choice, you kind of change reality. And by using different shutter speeds, by using motion blur, by freezing kind of more than we can usually see with our eyes, you're changing reality. So for me, it's pretty clear that every photograph we take, no matter what focal length, aperture, whatever, we're always just doing an interpretation of reality. So the idea that photography is portraying reality is nonsense in my opinion. And that is kind of very important to keep in mind, because it basically means that every photograph you take, no matter how obsolete it is always just a surreal image, never a real image. Habe ich bisher Quatsch gelabert oder macht das Sinn? Okay. By the way, I just realized that I'm still shooting black and white, but it's January now, which means that my black and white challenge that I was doing last year is over. I'm free to shoot color, but somehow it's not in my system yet. I think the moment has come. I will change my camera to color now. Monochrome off. And we'll see the world in color again. We're back. Crazy. Really, really crazy. And by the way, talking about reality in black and white, I think that this is kind of one of the core ideas where it's, you know, portrayed the best, because black and white photography basically is an abstraction of reality. Once we photograph in black and white, it becomes even more clear that what we photograph is not reality and can never be reality. Because, you know, okay, multitasking is not my thing, sorry, let me just take that image. Because it kind of shows that black and white is the purest form of being surreal without doing much. And this alone, I think, is such a good thought to keep in mind. Black and white photography, very established, everybody does it, is not portraying reality. Simple as that. But prove me wrong. By the way, if you are curious to learn more about my 1-year black and white commitment, you should check out my Instagram page and also my channel, since I have plenty of videos from this time up already and some more in the pipeline. Another thought I have and how I see photography is that photography, in my opinion, is like a language. We have different types of languages. When we think about art, we have painting, we have sculpture, drawing, graphic design, whatever, and also photography. And basically, creativity is just an expression in a different language. So when you, for example, want to portray an emotion, you can do that by taking a photo, but you can also express it another way. And I feel like this thought kind of helps me to see photography as something that is also translatable. If we think about different languages, you cannot always translate everything word by word. A couple of idioms, for example, there's just no way to express them in a different language, which means that learning different languages is enriching and very helpful to have different forms of expression and different feelings to portray. But at the same time, it also shows me that we don't have to limit ourselves to only one medium, but it can be very helpful to learn different languages and get inspiration from other languages than photography, which might be our, you know, native language in a way, to kind of broaden our horizon. And because of that, I really like to, for example, not only look at other photographers who I admire, but also look at painters and look what their paintings do to me. If there's something that I enjoy about it, and try to extract what it is, because it's not per se that it was a painting or a photograph, but usually it's some sort of message behind it that speaks to me, and see how I can kind of take that and use it for my photography as well, even though the initial inspiration might come from a medium that I'm not familiar with myself. So in my opinion, photography is just a different language, and we're capable of learning multiple languages. Nur es heißt?
Idioms.
Idioms. You know, I got a correction, it's called idioms. See, talking about languages, you maybe might not master them all, but at least it's a good try to try and learn a couple of more languages. Crazy. Wait, let me collect myself, because now I have to talk and go down the stairs and maybe look not very clumsy doing that. Okay, so, and it's windy as well. Oh my god, okay, I can do this. Okay, another thought I have is that every photo is unique. No matter how you look at it, if we see kind of photography in a grid where we have like a time and space continuum, so to speak, then once you take a photo, this photo was taken in that moment, and once the moment is gone, you cannot retake the same image. So even if you put the camera on a tripod, you frame an image and you take 2 photos right behind each other, these 2 images are not identical. Just throughout the nature of having this timely distance between them, you can never retake the same image again. You know what I mean? So sometimes when people talk about stealing and things like that, I don't think that such a concept per se can exist, because we cannot do the exact same photo. Of course, it's not good and not wise to try to copy somebody 101, but just by the nature of how I see our timeline, every photo is unique, even though it might kind of show the same thing. And by that, I think we should also treat every image that we take with a certain degree of respect, because every photo deserves to be treated in a unique way, because every photo is unique. Sounds cheesy, but that's truly what I think. Wie war das? Ja? Okay. Der Hintergrund aus, kann man hier schon anfangen zu reden? Okay. Well, the last point of every photo being unique also brings me to the next point, because I talked about time and space and how every photo is unique because it kind of pinpoints one definite point within this grid of time and space. And at the same time, I think we have to travel back about the history of photography a little bit more, because the next statement I would like to make is that photography is a time and space paradox. And what I mean by that is that photography was kind of an invention that totally changed the whole idea of how time and space works and how we as humans can kind of work with time and space. So basically what photography did was that for the first time in art and documentation, we were able to kind of freeze a moment in time that usually would take hours or days or years to kind of document in a different way by writing or by painting. And photography for the first time made it possible to freeze a moment within a split second. And that in and of itself was, revolutionary. But more than that, you have to think back to the roots of photography, where photography was actually a reproductional kind of method, because photography was always there to not only have one unique image or one unique result, as it was with painting, where you had like one, unique painting that was the only one existing. But with photography, right from the start, people wanted to have it for reproductional purposes. So people would go into the darkroom and print multiple copies of one negative, because the negative was not the end goal. So for the first time, it was also kind of a paradox of space, because the same image could exist in several spaces at the same time. And that alone, is mind-blowing. And I feel like today we've kind of lost I don't know what to say. I think we kind of lost the specialness of this, because photography is so ubiquitous and because we have photos all over. But just imagine that for the first time people were able to freeze time and have the same object in several spaces at the same time, which is just mind-blowing if you think about this, from this perspective. So I feel like to this date there's almost nothing that's a bigger paradox in time and space than photography is. Yeah, that's what I think. Wir können noch mal da lang gehen. So you might have noticed that I bumped up the production quality in my video a little bit for this one, because in my opinion it looks way better than my other videos. And you might be wondering, how did she do that? And here is the answer. I have a filmer. Of course, a very professional, very expensive filmer, because how much do you cost me an hour?
0, maybe French fries.
Yeah, she will get paid in French fries. And you might be wondering, how much experience in filming do you have?
None, really.
But do you know how to operate a camera at least?
I know how to turn it on.
Well, yes. So what I want to tell you here is that even if you have somebody who might not be very experienced when it comes to filming, you can still get very, very professional results, because we have this equipment that, helps to get the job done. And this is a gimbal, more precisely the zhiyun, I hope I pronounced the name correctly, a Weebill 3S gimbal, which my lovely filmer used to make this video, and I think it looks fantastic, but more on that here. Well, I did my homework by now and I found out that it's actually called zhiyun. I have to admit I haven't used many gimbals in the past, so I cannot really say anything about how it compares to other gimbals out there. But this one was definitely easy to set up and balance out, even for a gimbal newbie like me. It has all the classical modes like the pan follow, follow or lock mode, and if you connect your camera to the gimbal, you can adjust camera settings and start the recording directly from the handle. I didn't add any stabilization in post on this footage, and I think it looks pretty good. The gimbal does a great job keeping the shot steady, and for more detailed adjustments of the moving speed, the menu is pretty simple to navigate. For a gimbal that can handle bigger cameras, I assume that the Weebill 3S is still pretty compact and lightweight, but of course operating a gimbal is still hard work that potentially saves you a gym membership. To make it a little bit easier, there is a handle extension included in the combo pack to be able to operate it with two hands and also have a rest for your palm. One feature that I personally haven't used but which might be interesting for others is that it has a quick switch mechanism to change from horizontal to vertical recording. Other than that, it has an included light that you can adjust in brightness and color temperature. One of my resolutions for the new year was to improve the production quality in my videos and try to make my footage more appealing and cinematic. While equipment is certainly not everything to get there, I am pretty happy to have this gimbal in my arsenal now. So thank you once again to zhiyun for supporting my work with this collaboration. And no worries, of course I compensated my filmer with a large portion of french fries so that we are fueled up again for more philosophical perspectives. Let me do something to kind of illustrate my last point. This picture I just took is a picture of my filmer, so you could argue that this is a portrait, but I argue that this image I have just taken is also a self-portrait, because in my opinion, every photo we take is a self-portrait. Let me explain. Every photographer has a different perception, we talked about this before, and every photo is unique. So what photographers are drawn to are usually the things that interest them. And if you put 5 photographers in the same spot, you will come out with 5 different results, because every photographer sees the scene differently, interprets it differently, and therefore also photographs it differently. And if you take a look at the portfolio of a photographer, in the end you will see a scattered piece of their personality, because you will see what they're interested in, how they see and interpret the world, and therefore also photograph the world. So I think that whatever picture you take, it's always a hidden self-portrait, because it tells you just as much about the environment and the motif that you've taken as it tells you about yourself. So yeah, even this portrait is actually a self-portrait. Yeah. So these were my thoughts about my photography philosophy, but of course I would also be interested to hear your photography philosophy, and maybe there were some points that you agree with, some points that you don't agree with. Whatever it is, please leave your thoughts in the comments down below. And that being said, I would say thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one. Okay, passt schon.